Say the words, Cassian. The stone is cold and the pack is waiting. My Uncle Aldrich said it the way he said everything, as though he were doing me a courtesy by speaking at all. Below the terrace the whole of the Northreach stood packed into the judgment yard, 400 wolves in human skin, breath going up white in the first hard frost of the year, and in the middle of them, alone inside a ring of trodden snow, stood the woman who had killed my brother. She had her hand flat on the judgment stone. That is our law. You lay your palm on the black rock where the first Vale swore his oath, and you answer, and the pack listens, and afterward the king says what is to be done. It has been done that way for 600 years. I had done it 11 times myself since the crown came to me, and I had been praised each time for being quick and being right. Rena Ash, I said. My voice went out over their heads and came back off the hold's gray walls. You are named for the death of Doran Vale, my brother, second of that name, heir to the Northreach. Answer the pack. She lifted her head. I have gone back to that moment more times than I can count, and I still cannot lay it out honestly, because two things happened in the same breath and one of them ruined the other. The first was that she looked at me. The second was that the sound went out of the world. I do not mean the hall hushed. I mean the pack, the wind, the ice cracking down on the Bell water. All of it dropped away like a stone falling down a well, and what was left in the whole of the frozen north was the small dry scrape of her thumbnail against the judgment stone, and a smell that had no business in that yard. Green stems, crushed between two palms. I knew her. That is the only way I can put it. I did not think she is beautiful, though she was, in the plain, unhurried way of women who have never once in their lives been looked at by anyone important. I did not think she is guilty or she is innocent. I thought, there you are. The way you think it about a word in a language you were never taught and somehow have always known how to say. 311 years my line has kept the Northreach, and every Vale before me found his mate at a feast or a treaty or a moonrise, in silks, in summer. Mine was standing in a ring of trodden snow with 400 wolves waiting for me to sentence her. I made the draft, Rena Ash said. Not a tremor in it, not a plea. Valerian root, Moonleaf, a little honey because he hated the taste. I brewed it in my own pot. I carried it to his chamber myself, and I put it into his hands, and I watched him drink it. She let the words stand a moment. He was dead before the moon cleared the tower. The yard made a sound like a great animal turning over in its sleep. Aldrich leaned to my ear. There, he said, satisfied, it is finished. Did you poison him? I said. For the first time, something moved in her face. It was not fear. It was, I have had a long while to name it, and the only word I ever come back to is grief, and grief of a very particular kind. The kind that has been carried so long it has learned to sit up straight and behave itself in company. I have said what I did, she said. That is not an answer. It is all the answer I have. Then answer this, I said, and I heard my own voice going harder because the alternative was hearing what my blood was doing. Did anyone put you to it? Did anyone pay you, or threaten you, or promise you anything? Speak, and I will set the whole weight of this crown between you and them. Somewhere at the front of the crowd, Sabine Marrow began to weep, not softly. Sabine had been promised to my brother since she was 19. She had been going to be his Luna at the spring moon. She had spent the 2 days since his death sitting on the floor outside his door because she could not make herself go in, and no one had been able to lift her. Rena's eyes went to Sabine and stayed there a moment, and I watched something in her cost her. No one, she said, no one at all. Then tell me why. I will not. The yard broke. 400 voices at once, she says it herself. She brewed it, she carried it. She stood and watched him drink, and Aldrich's hand was on my sleeve, and my own beast was up and packing behind my ribs, and the sound had come back into the world, and I hated it. I want to be exact here because I have spent a winter learning to be. I did not think she was innocent. I have never been a fool, and I was not one that morning. She had brewed it. She had carried it. She had watched him drink. And when a woman is offered every road out and takes none of them, the pack sees a confession, and the pack is not stupid either. But there was a splinter in it, and I felt it go in even then, small and sharp and easy to ignore. Why would a poisoner brew it in her own pot, carry it in her own hands, and stand at the bedside where every soul in the hold could see her do it? I looked at Aldrich. My uncle had run the Northreach's law for 30 years, and he had run it well, and he was already turning toward the herald with the sentence in his mouth, because there is only one sentence under Moon law for the killing of an heir, and it does not involve exile. Not death, I said. The word went out into the yard and stopped it dead. Aldrich turned very slowly. Cashin. She confessed to the act and not to the crime, I said. The law says a hand that confesses cannot be pardoned. It does not say a mouth that keeps a secret must be silenced forever. I stood. The crown weighs a little under 2 pounds, and I have never in my life been so aware of it. Rena Ash, herb woman of Stonewatch, you are cast out of this pack and out of this hold. You will go to the croft at Hollowbeck, and you will not cross the boundary stone, and no wolf of the Northreach will hunt with you, eat with you, or speak your name. From this hour you have no pack. For our kind, that is not a lesser thing. There are men in the north who would sooner take the blade. She took it standing. She lifted her hand off the stone and looked at her own palm as though checking that it had left nothing behind, and then she inclined her head to me, not low, not high, and turned, and the ring of wolves opened for her the way water opens for a stone. Weakness, Aldrich said under his breath, watching her go. They will say the king went soft. Let them. They will say worse. They will say you were charmed by an herb woman over your own brother's body. I did not answer him because he was not wrong, and because at that moment the last thing happened, and it was the thing that undid me, though it took me 11 weeks to understand that it had. At the yard's edge, where the crowd thinned toward the gate, a wolf came out of the shadow of the wall. Not a young one, gray through the rough, one ear notched from a boar hunt 8 winters gone, big enough that grown men stepped back without deciding to. My brother's wolf. Doran had run with Rook since he was 15 years old. The two of them had been one animal wearing 2 shapes, and since the night Doran died Rook had lain across his master's door and let no one pass, not me, not Sabine, not the women who came to wash him. Rook walked out into the open. He crossed the whole width of the judgment yard, in front of 400 wolves who had just called Rena Ash a murderer, and he fell in at her left hand. She stopped. She looked down at him. She said something to him that no one heard, 3 words, 4 at most, and I watched her mouth make the shape of it, and I have never in my life wanted so badly to know what a woman said to a wolf. Rook did not move. She stood a moment longer. Then she went out through the gate, and the great gray wolf went with her, and the pack watched them both cross the snow toward Hollowbeck and did not say one word. That night I sat in my brother's cold room with his hunting things around me, and I could not stop hearing the sound of nothing, the yard gone quiet, her thumbnail on the stone. A wolf will not lie down at the door of the one who killed his bonded, not for love, not for bribery, not for anything. Ask any wolf in the north, they will tell you it is simply not in the animal. I told myself Rook was mad with grief. I told myself it every day for 11 weeks. Winter closed the Northreach like a hand. I did my work. There is always work. The North Road to be kept open, the Carrow border to be soothed, the grain to be counted twice because a hold that eats through its stores by the thaw has lost more men than any war took. I sat in council and heard Aldrich read the tallies. I settled a quarrel about a mill. I did not go to Hollowbeck. I went to Hollowbeck in the 4th week. I had a reason. I want that written down because it was a good reason and I had polished it on the ride out. The boundary stone at Hollowbeck had leaned since the autumn storms. And a leaning boundary stone is a lawsuit waiting to happen. And a king who cannot keep his own boundary stones upright has no business keeping a border. The croft sat where the beck came out of the hollow, one low gray house with a turf roof, smoke going straight up in the cold. There was a woodpile stacked better than my own men stack mine. There were bundles of something drying under the eave. And there was a wolf on the threshold, chin on paws, watching me come, and he did not rise and he did not growl. He only thumped his tail twice against the stone, once for each of us, and I could have wept. She came out with her sleeves pushed up, and her hands red from the cold water. "My lord," she said, "the boundary stone leans." Rena looked at the stone, which stood 100 paces off across the white ground, black and old, and leaning like a tired man. "It has leaned 9 years," she said. "Ugh." The frost lifts it every spring and drops it a little further over. "You have watched it, then?" "I walk to it and I stop," she said, "because I have been told not to cross it. There is not much else out here to look at." I dismounted. I had not intended to dismount. I will not pretend the next 11 weeks were an investigation. They were not at first. I rode out to Hollowbeck the way a man goes back to press a bruise. I brought grain, and she took it because she was not a fool and the winter was long. I brought a book of my brother's, and she looked at it as though I had set a coal in her hand, and set it on the shelf unopened, and never once mentioned it again. She would not speak of Doran. I tried it 3 ways. The first time I said his name outright, and she went to the fire and mended it, and did not turn round until I had changed the subject. The second time I told her I had begun to doubt, and she said, "Then you have begun to be unjust, my lord." I told the pack the truth. I brewed it and I carried it and I watched him drink. And she said it so evenly that I rode home half convinced again and hated myself for the half. The third time I lost my temper. I am not proud of it. I said that a woman who would not defend herself was a coward, that her silence was a kind of lie, that she had let 400 people who had known her since she was a child go on believing she had put death into a man's hands. I said it standing in her doorway with the cold coming in past me, and she stood by her table with a bunch of dried moonleaf in her fist and let me finish. Then she said, "Do you know what my mother did, my lord?" "No." Was the herb woman here before me, 31 years, and she used to say that people come to you at the worst hour of their life and they tell you the thing they have never told anyone because you are only the herb woman and it does not count. Her chin lifted just barely. It counts. Everything anybody ever told me counts, and if I begin choosing which of them to hand back when it would be convenient for me, then I am not an herb woman at all. I am only a woman who knows things about people. And I stood in her door with my mouth open like a boy. "He told you something," I said. She turned back to her table and did not answer, and I saw her hands were shaking, and I understood too late, weeks too late, that I had never once in my life been on the wrong side of a door with someone braver than I was. I did not go back for 11 days. I went back on the 12th with a sack of oats and an apology that I could not get out of my mouth, and I chopped her woodpile instead badly for 2 hours, and when I had finished she came out and looked at my ruined stacking and said, "It will do," in a voice with something in it that was almost, very nearly, warmth. That was the winter, a ruined woodpile, Rook thumping his tail. Once, a splinter under my thumbnail that she dug out with a needle by firelight, holding my hand flat and steady in both of hers while my heart went like a hunted thing, and neither of us said one word about it afterward. And under all of it, the splinter I could not dig out. Why in her own pot? Why in her own hands? Why standing at the bedside where everyone could see? The thing broke open sideways, as such things do. At midwinter the hold keeps the long watch, a night of candles, the year turning, everyone who has died since the last one named aloud. Sabine Marrow came to the nomming. She had not left her rooms in 2 months. She stood through the whole of it with her hands folded, and when they said Doran's name she did not weep at all, which frightened me more. Afterward I found her in the gallery, looking at the shields. "You gave her Hollowbeck," she said. "You should have given her the stone." I know what you think of me." "You do not," Sabine turned. Her face was very white and very calm. "I think you are a good king who did a cowardly thing, and I think I understand why you did it better than you would like." She looked away. "Everyone in the hold has seen you ride out along the Beck Road." There was nothing to say to that, so I said nothing, which is the same as saying yes. "I loved him," Sabine said. "You know that." "I know it. Do you know he would not take the bond?" I looked up. "The mating bond," she said, her mouth twisted. "A year cash-in, 14 months, every time in the spring, after the harvest, when the border is quiet. He would kiss my hands and he would not take the bond, and I let it go on because I thought." She stopped. "I thought there was someone else. I thought perhaps she—" "No," I said, "it was not that." "How do you know?" And I found that I did know. I knew it in the bones of my hands. Whatever Rena Ash was carrying, it was not that. "He hated the summer," Sabine said suddenly, as though it had been sitting in her throat for months. "Did you know that? Your brother who used to swim the Bell water in April. The last 2 years he would not go out at moonrise. He said he was tired. He was 31 years old." Her voice cracked at last, just once, like ice. "Nobody is tired at 31. I went to my brother's room that night. It was exactly as he had left it, because I had forbidden anyone to touch it, and because a coward's grief will call itself reverence if you let it. His boots by the door, his bow with the string off, his winter cloak on the peg, the good dark one lined with fur, and I took it down and put my face in it like a dog because I was drunk and alone and there was no one to see. And I saw the fur. Not the lining. The shoulders, the collar, the inside of the hood. Caught in the weave of the wool, dozens of them, hundreds short coarse guard hairs, shed the way a wolf sheds in high summer. Ash gray. My brother's wolf was red. Red as a fox, red as our mother's hair, red as every Vale male has been since the first of us. It is our line's one vanity, and my own beast is the same. Doran's coat had been the color of a copper pot. I stood in a dead man's room with a cloak in my fists and my heart going, and I could not put the two things together. And then I could, and I wish to God I could not. Because we have a word in the north for a wolf that sheds ash. I rode to Hollowbeck before dawn without waking the hold. It was the coldest night of that winter. The Bell water had frozen right across, and the pines cracked like slow gunshots, and I got there with the sky just going gray and my hands so numb I could not undo the buckle of my own cloak. Rena opened the door with an iron in her hand, saw it was me, and put it down. "The gray wasting," I said. She went absolutely still. "It is in our blood," I said. "It goes down the male line, 1 in 3, 1 in 4, my great-grandfather, his brother, my father's cousin who they said drowned." My voice was doing something I could not control. "It comes at 30, 35. The wolf's coat goes ash. Then he cannot hold the shape at moonrise. Then he cannot hold the man's shape either some nights. Then his lungs fill and he drowns standing up, and it takes 2 years and it is very bad." Rena did not move. "It is why the Carows nearly broke the treaty in my grandfather's day," I said. "It is why we do not speak of it. A pack will not follow a bloodline that carries it. There are 4 families in this kingdom who would have a claim on the Northreach the hour it was known." I put my hand flat on her doorframe because I needed to hold something. "How long?" "My lord." "How long did you know, Rena?" Her eyes were wet and her voice, when it came, was steady. That was the thing about her. It was always steady. 14 months, she said. I sat down on her step. I had to. "He came to me at the end of the summer before last," she said, above me, quiet. "He had found the fur in his own bed and he did not know what it meant. He was—" her breath caught. "He was so calm, my lord. He asked me straight out. He had ridden to Hollowbeck alone at night so no one would see him at the herb-woman's door in the daylight. And I told him the truth because he asked for it. And when I had told him, he sat exactly where you are sitting, and he was quiet a long time, and then he laughed. Do you know that he laughed?" I did not trust myself to speak. He said, "Well, that is a nuisance." She made a sound that was not a laugh and was not a sob. And then he made me swear. Swear what? That I would tell no one, not the council, not Lady Sabine, not you. Her voice did not rise, it only got very clear, the way it had been on the judgment stone. He said if it were known, the Carows would come to the border before he was in the ground, and they would come with a lawful claim, and the pack would look at you and count the years until you turned 30. He said his brother had held this kingdom together with 2 hands since he was 22 and would not be given a kingdom that could be taken from him with a handful of gray fur. She stopped, started again. He said, "Let me be his brother, Rena, not his warning." The wind came down the hollow and went over us both. "The Tazan," I said. Valerian and Moonleaf, for the pain in his chest. He had been taking it from me since the first snow of last year, a little at a time, riding out here in the dark like a thief. Her hands opened and closed. That last night he could not get his breath. He sent for me openly in front of everyone because he was past caring, and I think he wanted the company. I brewed it in his rooms because there was no time to go anywhere. I gave it to him. He drank it, he said. She stopped. "Say it," I whispered. He said, "Don't let him blame himself. He does that." She wiped her face roughly with the back of her wrist. And then he went to sleep, and 40 minutes later his lungs filled, and I could not do anything at all. I was holding both his hands, and I could not do one thing. I sat on her step in the snow with my head in my hands. "You could have told me," I said, "in the yard in front of all of them, one word." "And what would that word have cost you?" I looked up at her. "Say I speak," Rena said. "Say I stand on your stone and I tell 400 wolves that the veil line carries the wasting and that your brother died of it and hid it. Who believes me? An herb woman with a dead heir on her hands and every reason in the world to invent a sickness. And if they do believe me," her voice finally broke, "then I have taken your crown from you with the last words your brother ever gave anybody. He asked me. He was dying and he asked me." What was I supposed to do, Cashin? She had never once used my name. I stood up. I was shaking and not from the cold. "He buried it," I said. She blinked. "He was a careful man. He was the most careful man I ever knew. He wouldn't have burned it. Burning fur stinks. The kitchens would have known. He wouldn't have thrown it in the beck. It floats." I was already turning, already looking out across the white ground toward the black leaning stone at the boundary. 14 months of shed coat. Where does a man put 14 months of shed coat where no one goes and nothing digs? Rook came out past my legs into the snow. He did not wait for us. He went straight across the hollow, unhurried, the way an old wolf goes when he has known a thing so long he cannot remember being told it. He went to the leaning stone. He put his shoulder against the low black face of it where the frost had lifted it out of true, and he began to dig. There was a hollow beneath the stone, dry as a bone, roofed by the tilt of it. Doran had lined it with oiled canvas because he was who he was. There were 7 bundles, one for each of the seasons he had lived through since he found out, each tied with a scrap of harness leather. Ash-gray fur, brittle, weightless, more than a man could hold in both arms. And on top of the last one, folded twice, a square of paper with my brother's handwriting on it. He wrote a shocking hand. Our tutor despaired of him. "Whoever finds this, it was mine and it was no one's fault. Don't tell him. Let me be his brother, not his warning." I knelt in the snow at the boundary of my own kingdom, and I put my face in the fur of my brother's wolf. And Rook stood absolutely still and let me. And behind me, I heard Rena Ash sit down slowly in the snow, as though her legs had simply stopped agreeing to the business of holding her up. We stayed there a long time. The sun came up over the hollow, thin and white. "He was so frightened of you knowing," she said at last. "Not of dying, of you knowing." "I know. He used to say," she stopped and tried again and got it out. "He used to say, 'My brother thinks he is made of stone, and he isn't, and one day something is going to hit him in the right place and he will find out.'" I laughed. It came out wrong, wet and cracked, and it was still the truest laugh I had made in a year. Then I looked at her, sitting in the snow with her hair coming down and her mouth trembling and my brother's confession in her lap, and I said the thing I had not let myself say in 11 weeks. I knew you on the stone. Rena went very white. The moment you lifted your head, I have waited 9 years for a council to bring me a woman my blood would answer to, and my blood answered in a judgment yard while I was sentencing you. My throat closed. I made it open. I did not put a hand on that stone and doubt you because doubting you was clever. I doubted you because I could not bear it. And then I exiled you because I was afraid of what the pack would say. And I have been riding out here all winter to be near a woman I was too much of a coward to clear. You could not clear me, she said. There was nothing. There was you, I said, standing there, saying only true things. I heard the words and I did not hear her, and that is not law, Rena. That is laziness with a crown on. She looked down at the paper in her lap. Her thumb moved across my brother's terrible handwriting, very gently, the way you would smooth a child's hair. You cannot use it, she said. I know exactly what it is. If you read that aloud, they will know the wasting is in your line. Yes. The Caros. Yes. Cashin. She got up. She was small, and she came and stood in front of me and took hold of the front of my cloak in both fists, and it was the first time in her life she had touched me without permission. You will lose the North. He died to keep you from losing the North. He died of a sickness, I said, and everything after that was you and me trying to be worthy of him. I put my hands over hers. I have thought about it every mile of the ride out here, I said. There are 2 things I can do. I can bury this again and quietly declare you innocent by a king's grace, and every wolf in the Northreach will nod and smile and know that the herb woman was let off because the king rides out along the Beck Road. You would have your life. You would never have your name, and I would spend the rest of mine ruling by a lie my brother paid for. Lord. Or I stand on that stone myself, I said, and tell them the truth, all of it, that my brother was dying and hid it and asked a woman to keep his last secret, and that she kept it while 400 people called her a murderer, which is a thing not one of the rest of us would have had the spine to do. And then I show them the fur, and I let them decide whether the blood in my body can be trusted with this crown. Her hands were shaking inside mine. They may take it from you. Then they take it, I said. Rena, I have held the Northreach with 2 hands since I was 22, and my brother was right about that, and it never once cost me anything I minded losing. I find I do not want a kingdom that has to be kept by letting you be called a murderer. That is not a kingdom. That is a horde. She began to cry then, and she did it exactly as she did everything, standing straight up with her chin steady, and I held her against my chest at the boundary stone with my brother's wolf leaning warm on both our legs, and I said nothing at all, because for once in my life there was nothing to judge. The Moon Court is the whole pack, and the whole pack came. They came because a king does not call the court in midwinter for a mill dispute. They filled the yard and the terrace and the wall walk, and the ones who could not get in stood on the ice of the Bell water below and heard it repeated back to them in pieces, the way news goes. Aldrich met me in the doorway. He had the look of a man who has been up all night arithmeticking. Whatever this is, he said, do not. Uncle, I have served this house since before you were whelped. I know what is in the cloak under your arm. I have known what was in your brother since the summer he stopped swimming, and I said nothing. Because saying nothing is what this family has always. He stopped himself, breathing hard. His hands, I noticed, were not steady. I sent that woman to the stone, Cashin. Do you understand what you are about to make me? Let her be quietly pardoned. Let her have a farm in the West with a purse. It is tidy. It is tidy, I agreed. Stand where they can see you. I went out onto the terrace, and the yard went quiet, and I put my hand flat on the cold black rock where the first Vale swore his oath. I have made speeches. This was not one. I told it as it happened, plainly in the order it happened, the way Rena Ash tells things. The fur and the cloak, the word for it. The 4 families who would have a claim. My brother laughing on an herbwoman's step and calling his own death a nuisance. The vow he asked for. The vow she kept in this yard in front of every one of them with her hand on this stone, when one sentence would have set her free and ruined me. And then I lifted the sack and let the bundles fall out onto the terrace stones. 7 of them, ash-gray and weightless, and the wind took a little of it up over the heads of my pack like something burning. "That is my brother," I said. "That is what killed him. It is in my blood, and it may come for me at 30, and I am 29 years old." Nobody moved. The law says a hand that confesses cannot be pardoned. She confessed to brewing a tisane, and she brewed it, and she has never lied to any of you. My voice went out and came back off the walls, and I let it. The charge was murder. The charge was false. I made it, and I let you all keep it because I heard her words and I did not listen to her, and the difference between those 2 things is the whole of the law, and I did not know it. I know it now. It cost me a winter, and it cost her a year, and she is owed the difference. I looked out at 400 faces. Rena Ash is innocent. She is no exile. She has a pack. I took the crown off my head. It weighs a little under 2 pounds. And if you will not have a king with ash in his blood, say so now, and I will set this down and go, and no one will lift a hand for me. That is the price of the truth, and I have decided I can pay it. What I could not pay was the other thing. The silence went on so long, I heard the ice groan out on the bell water. Then, at the front of the yard, a woman in black knelt down in the snow. Sabine Marrow, who had wept in this yard while a murderer was sentenced and gone home and lived in it. She knelt, and she was not looking at me at all. She was looking past me to the terrace steps, where Rena stood with her hands folded and her face like a woman waiting to be struck. "Was he in pain?" Sabine said. The whole yard heard it. Rena came down the steps. She knelt in the snow in front of Sabine Marrow and took both her hands, and I did not hear the beginning of what she said, but I heard the end of it because she meant it to be heard. "At the last he was not," she said. "He was warm, and he was easy, and he was not alone, and he spoke of you. He said your name and mine in the same breath, my lady, and he asked me to give you the same thing he was asking me to give the king, and I could not do it, and I am sorry. He wanted you both to be spared him." Sabine Marrow put her forehead down on the herbwoman's shoulder, in front of the whole Northreach, and wept, and Rena Ash held her. And it was Rook, my brother's red-gray wolf, notched ear, chin up, who lifted his head and gave one long note over the 2 of them. And then 400 wolves in human skin bowed their heads in the snow, and nobody had told them to. They did not take the crown. They were not sentimental about it. The council sat for 6 days, and Aldrich, who did not resign, because I did not let him. A man who has done one great wrong is often the safest hand you have afterward. Read out every case of the wasting in 300 years, and prove that it takes 1 man in 4. And the Northreach decided, in the ordinary grinding way that real things are decided, that it would rather have a king who told it the truth about his blood than one who did not. The Carrows came to the border in the spring. They looked at 400 wolves standing in the snow behind me, and at the woman on my left with her hand on an old wolf's ruff, and they thought better of it, and we ate together, and it was very dull, and I have never enjoyed a dull day so much in my life. I did not claim her. I want that written down too. There was a night at the end of that winter when the pack would have roared for it, when I could have stood in my own hall and taken her hand in front of everyone who had once called her murderer, and they would have loved me for it, and it would have been a very fine thing to look at. I went out to Hollowbeck instead, on foot, and knocked on the door of a croft I had exiled her to, and stood on the step with my hat in my hands like a farmer. "You have a pack now," I said. "You may go anywhere in the north. There is a house at Stonewatch with a physic garden that has been empty 9 years, and it is yours whatever you say to me, and no one will ever again ask you to explain yourself for keeping a confidence." I know, Rena said, and I have been in love with you since a morning I would give my right hand to have back, I said. And I have nothing to offer you but a name that half this kingdom used to spit, a blood that may be counting down the years on me, and a brother's grave I go and talk to like a madman. You have carried enough for this family. You are entitled to say no, and I will keep away, and it will not cost you one thing. She looked at me for a long moment. Then she stepped back and opened the door wider, and the firelight came out over the snow, and she said, "Come in, Cassian. Your hands are cold." That is all. She never once told me she loved me in words that winter. She told me by digging a splinter out of my thumb, and by holding my hand flat and steady in both of hers, and by mending my ruined woodpile without a syllable of complaint, and by standing in a ring of trodden snow with her hand on a black stone, while 400 wolves waited for me to be wrong about her. We were bonded at the thaw in the hollow, with 11 people and 1 wolf, and Sabine Marrow held the flowers. I had my brother's note sewn into the lining of the crown. It sits against my head every day of my life, and on the days when I am tempted to be quick and be right, I feel the paper move, and I stop, and I ask the second question. Rook lived 4 more years. He slept every night across our door, as he had slept across my brother's, and he would rise for no one but her. He is buried under the leaning stone. I have never set it straight. It leans a little further every spring, and every spring my Luna walks out to it with her sleeves pushed up and looks at it and says, "It will do." And it does.